Today on TimesCast, British and French leaders visit Tripoli to meet with the new Libyan transitional government.
They've come straight into something of a muddle in terms of who's running the show here.
The Fed coordinates with the European Central Bank and others to stave off a dollar shortage for the Eurozone's beleaguered banks. And 6 months after Bahrain's brutal crackdown on democratic protests, sectarian tension is brewing.
President Nicolas Sarkozy of France and Prime Minister David Cameron of Great Britain came to Tripoli to pay their respects to the former rebels and their transitional government.
There's still more work to be done. There's still a long way to go, but I think to show international support for the NTC, for Chairman Jalil, Prime Minister Jibril, and what they're doing, I think it's important to be here.
They've come straight into something of a muddle in terms of who's running the show here. From a protocol point of view, these heads of states are visiting a country that has no head of state. What you have now on the anti-Gaddafi side is kind of a mishmash. You have Mustafa Abdul Jalil, who's the chairman of the Transitional National Council. He's based in Benghazi in the east, where most people live, half the population possibly. He's generally acceptable to most sides, including to the Islamic factions. Then you have Mahmoud Jibril, who's the prime minister of the interim government. Most of the time during the entire revolution, he's been out of the country, lobbying on behalf of the rebels' concerns and fairly effectively. But that has not helped him build up any kind of political base, and the Islamists have him firmly in their sights. The Islamists have a very great share of the power so far. The most powerful political personality is a man named Ali Salabi, who's an Islamist who wants to see an Islamic government in this country. And while he says he respects democratic society and wants to see a pluralistic kind of Islam, a lot of people have their doubts. There's a real vacuum of leadership at the top, which nobody is better poised and organized to fill than the Islamists.
Today, all the central banks, the major lenders around the world, got together and they announced that they were going to provide as many dollars as the European banks needed to stay into business and prevent any troubles. It's not that any particular bank is on verge of collapse right now, but this is a confidence-boosting measure that they hope will calm the markets and allow them time to work out some of the bigger problems that Europe faces, particularly in terms of resolving the debt situation with Greece and overcoming the real slowdown and weakening of the European economy. The next step is a meeting of the finance ministers from all the countries in Europe. They're going to get together in Poland tomorrow. Their hope is to work out a deal that will make sure that all the countries agree to the bailout plan they've already adopted for Greece, but which hasn't been ratified by the countries yet. And if they can't reach an agreement very soon, the markets are likely to attack the euro and the eurozone again. It's a meeting, in fact, which unusually enough is going to feature Timothy Geithner, the U.S. Treasury Secretary. He's expected basically to tell them to get their act together, speak with one voice, and do what is necessary to prevent the financial problems in Europe from spreading to the rest of the world.
Bahrain has been largely off limits to foreign press since police attacked pro-democracy protesters this spring. Beirut Bureau Chief Anthony Shadid sneaked in recently to gauge the state of unrest there.
Across the region, Bahrain is seen as the cornerstone of the counter-revolution. That wasn't the case back in February, when hundreds, even thousands of protesters took to a landmark roundabout in the island known as Pearl Square. The crackdown that ensued disproportionately targeted the Shiites, and some activists have compared the crackdown to apartheid-style repression. 1,400 people were arrested, most of them Shiites. Torture was rife, and activists trade stories of some of the most sordid examples of that mistreatment in jails. Across the island, one of the most lasting legacies of the crackdown is an exacerbation of sectarian tension. The two communities, Sunni and Shiite on the island, never lived in harmony really, but the degree of resentment and tension between the two communities is unprecedented. Economic woes have accelerated, and the state continues to use violence against its own people in the hopes of frustrating demands for reform. Often when you talk to the youthful activists, the same people who took to the square back in February, there are warnings of violence now. Across the Arab world, the tumult has been unpredictable. There's the onset of Islamists in Egypt, the fear of civil war in Syria, and the prospect of anarchy in Yemen. But Bahrain offers an altogether different example. Even where a crackdown succeeds, there's the threat of more violence ahead.